Good morning. I hope we're all feeling energised, maybe over caffeinated already for day 2 of Intersekt. Welcome to today's session. So we're covering open finance and unlocking new opportunities. I'm Lauren Applegate. I am the Director of Customer Success and Marketing for Envestnet Yodlee for Australia and New Zealand. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with Yodlee, but for those who aren't, Envestnet Yodlee, we are the leading data aggregation and analytics platform. We have been in the market for over 23 years, have over 1,500 customers within Australia and around the globe, and over 30 million connected end users. We are an accredited data recipient and intermediary under the Australian Consumer Data Act. And our solution and our hybrid approach to open banking is to give fintechs the most comprehensive access to data, to both CDR and non-CDR data. And I'm very privileged to join an esteemed panel here today. So 2 of which I'm actually very lucky to have had the pleasure to work closely with for the last few years. So please join me in welcoming Dan Jovevski from WeMoney, Emily Martin from Treasury, and Simon Docherty from Frollo. Now, I'd like to hand over to the panel, and look, this is a subject that's very close to Envestnet Yodlee and works very well with our business ethos. So we are all about empowering businesses and consumers to live their most intelligent financial life, and that's through access to data and innovative technology. So I'll just hand over to the panel now to introduce a bit more about themselves and their businesses. Dan, would you like to get us started?
100%. Well, great to be here, Lauren. Dan Jovevski, founder and CEO of WeMoney. WeMoney is a social financial wellness platform that helps Gen Z and millennials crush debt and get ahead in their financial lives. We're 21 months old with 330,000 downloads. My prior life was also in Fintech. We had a company called Switch My Loan that we built, scaled and exited in 2016.
Thanks, Lauren. My name's Emily Martin. I head up the policy and engagement branch in the consumer data and digital division at the Treasury. So my business is policy advice and engagement. And Treasury is the lead agency for the CDR. We provide the advice to the Minister on the new sectors and the new functionality for the CDR. And we also make the rules and have overall responsibility for the program, but work very closely with the other CDR agencies, the ACCC, the OAIC, and the Data Standards Body. Thanks.
Thanks, Lauren. So Simon Docherty, Frollo. We're a purpose-driven fintech, and that purpose is to help people feel good about money. We do that in both a B2B and a B2C context. So in the B2C context, we have our own Frollo app. It's free for you to go and download if you want to. And then so we don't commercialise that app at all. In the B2B sense is where we do commercialise the business, and we build open banking powered solutions, right from collection and consent of data through to helping people deliver customer propositions to market. We're the first fintech accredited under the Consumer Data Right. So we've been working with the data for about nearly 2.5 years now, which has been an interesting journey, and hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that today.
Thank you, everyone. Well, let's just dive straight into the heart of the conversation today. So I'm interested to hear from the panel, what are the new opportunities which CDR has unlocked for both the consumer and fintechs? Dan, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'd love to, Lauren. And I think, open finance, open banking, it's a big topic, for a lot of people to consume. But I want to take it down to the human level about a real WeMoney member that's gone through the experience of managing their finances. Emma from Brisbane, a 35-year-old single mother of 2 beautiful kids. She works 3 jobs, not because she wants to, but she has to. She bought a property 5 years ago, and the stress of a mortgage and those repayments elicits the same effect as if she were to sit in a doctor's office to wait for a biopsy result. And that's a very painful experience for a person like Emma. And I think the future potential, for Emma in her experience with managing her finances with open banking is that instead of her thinking about refinancing her mortgage right now, which she would rather go to a dentist, have her teeth pulled out without an anaesthetic, than go through that very painful journey of going through that end-to-end process of switching her mortgage. And if we think about what open finance can do for Emma in the future, is that she wakes up one day, goes into the WeMoney app, receives a push notification that the RBA has increased the interest rates yet again, and instead of her feeling disempowered about that entire journey and process, she can scan the marketplace for those cheaper alternatives and with the press of a button, take her mortgage from 4% to 3% and save herself over $3,500 per year. Now that's important for Emma in a very, very big way, because one of her goals that she's had in her life is to take her and her kids on their first international trip. And that's something that she couldn't do before because of the thought and the process of potentially going through that very painful journey of switching her mortgage has now been evaporated. And that's what we see the future potential of open finance, is these very quick, instant processes of people being able to receive value rather than those very archaic processes. And I think, we all are, Emma, to a certain degree. We pay this excessive loyalty tax to a lot of banks and financial institutions, and that's a story that many Australians also share as they navigate through their money and their finances.
Great, thank you. Simon, would you like to add?
Yeah, and I think that's a great example. I think CDR does unlock examples like that really well. From the fintech perspective, the customer experiences that Dan's kind of talking about is what fintech does really well. And what CDR brings to that is just the ability to have speed and reliability of data. And that's important because if you're building an experience based off great data and you can't get it quickly and you can't get it reliably, you're not going to be able to deliver the experience that you want. And I guess the last couple of years of us working in CDR is that we've seen that it's been an evolutionary process, but we're now at a point where that speed and reliability is there. It enables fintechs to create great experiences and to have confidence that the data is going to be able to help them deliver the customer proposition that they want to. From the consumer's perspective, I think it's really important, and the consumer data right's all about security and control for the consumer in their data. And why is that important for the consumer's perspective? So we have in our app, both in our consumer app, we have both screen scraping and CDR data. We've started with screen scraping, and then as we've developed the consumer data with the consumer data right, we've been able to now ingest about 70% of our data comes from CDR. And what we see is a very distinct difference between the screen scraping journey and CDR. So we're getting about a 50% higher conversion rate of people linking their bank accounts when they go through the CDR data path. And so what that is for us, it's a real proof point about the security and control is important to people. And why is that important then to fintechs and businesses? Well, that's important because they know that they're going to get more successful use cases, more successful customer propositions if they build them off CDR data.
Great, thank you, Simon. Well, you've already touched on it to begin with, that this is about what outcomes you've experienced already, so successes or challenges with having CDR data. And I know both yourself and WeMoney already have CDR on your platform. Can you talk us through a bit more of the successes and challenges that you've seen?
Yep. Look, the challenges, this is probably the 6th session on CDR I've been to at this conference, so it's definitely a hot topic for Intersekt this year. And the challenges have been discussed on quite a few of those panels. So, but really, I think for me, they all come down to what is a very complex regime and how that's had to be rolled out. So it was never going to hit on day one and be ready to go. So things like the complex data structures, the accreditation process, all of those have had to be worked through. I guess what we see now is that's all in place. That's all there. It's all ready to go. And in fact, we're delivering it into the market through a variety of use cases. So it will continue to have challenges, but I think all the big ones now have been knocked over. Certainly our experience is that they have been knocked over. And then if I flip over and just concentrate on where the successes are, again, it's the speed and reliability of the data and the ability to use that to deliver compelling customer propositions. That is there today. We see about a 98% success rate of API calls, CDR API calls. and the speed of that is around sub 1 second on average. And don't forget, we're going out and hitting up to 110 banks, and we're getting that data back super quick. Great stats, but again, they are what are going to power genuinely compelling customer propositions, and that I think is really going to be the success of CDR. Just final point. Certainly, in a lot of the sessions that I've been in, there's been discussion about, well, you know, the consumer doesn't really understand open banking, doesn't really understand what the consumer data right is. As it expands into energy and telco, you know, is it going to be important that the consumer understand what it is? You know, from my perspective, it's not. The consumer data right is going to sit in the background, and it's going to empower great experiences for consumers, and that'll be bringing together, you know, really compelling data sets really quickly and being able to create compelling customer propositions from that.
Dan, would you like to add?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think for us, the journey of accreditation was a long one, but I think useful because it's the start of a new process and a new regime, and that process, I think, was tough on purpose in order to get through all those barriers to get to accreditation. But, you know, we've been through that now and live now with 10 open banking organisations. I think just to add on what Simon mentioned is that, you know, CDR's got great literacy. In fact, we're surprised by the degree of literacy that a lot of our members know about the CDR, and in fact, they've sorted out. I think there's people in two buckets. There's people that will just sign up to WeMoney, go through the process, connect their accounts, and then, hey, it works, all good. And there's other people that have been waiting on the sidelines for CDR to be implemented in order for them to become a WeMoney member. And so we went live in July, and we've seen a massive increase in people now connecting their open banking accounts. Look, there's a few little issues and gremlins with the data, but I have to take my hat off to the government and everyone else that's been in that ecosystem, supporting that process of providing that feedback so we can fix and resolve all those issues, which is bound to happen with any new program. So for us, it's been nothing but a success for our members, and yeah, we look forward to the evolution of it.
That's great. And look, it's good to see actual fintech innovation come out of the access to data, and that's the entire purpose of the consumer data right, which is ultimately going to benefit consumers. So it's good to see. From an Envestnet Yodlee perspective, we're all about bringing every single piece of data possible to that consumer experience, which is why we offer still today, I suppose, a screen scraping approach as well as CDR data. So it's all about superannuation and investment accounts that aren't yet available via CDR, but we're looking forward to when it is. So on that note, Emily, I would actually like to expand to you. So as we're expanding outside of just open banking and into open finance, can you talk us through from Treasury what we can expect in that rollout?
Yeah, sure, Lauren. So it is a really exciting time for the CDR in terms of the expansion. As Simon mentioned before, the next sector that we have coming on is energy, and it will be followed by telecommunications. And then we're moving into open finance and unlocking data sets in non-bank lending, general insurance and superannuation. And really, the move to open finance came from a strategic assessment that the Treasury undertook and really looked at those data sets that would be able to complement which was what was already in the system in open banking, but also data sets that would bring real benefits to consumers in terms of them seeing their full financial picture. So bringing together all of these important data sets to see what their financial picture is so that they can do some financial planning, they can make good financial decisions, and the innovators in the sector can come up with the great products and services that will enable them to do that. So at the moment, we have a non-bank lending designation instrument out for consultation. So if there are non-bank lenders in the room, would really encourage you to get involved and provide feedback to that process. And then we'll be progressively rolling out into superannuation and targeted data sets in general insurance. The strategic assessment also provided us with really good feedback from industry and stakeholders about the CDR being flexible and agile, being able to bring in targeted data sets that will offer the most value for consumers. So we are taking a more targeted approach when we start moving into superannuation and general insurance. I think I'd just also like to mention we're really excited about the benefits of combining data with action initiation. So we have, the Treasury has begun work on action initiation, and we expect to release exposure draft legislation to enable action initiation very soon. So I would also encourage people to get involved in that process. And also on the horizon, we have the statutory review. Treasury supported Elizabeth Kelly, an independent reviewer, to undertake a review of the statutory framework. And I can't go into details about what's in that report, but I can say that Elizabeth really recognised the value that we get from businesses and innovators in coming up with those products and services for consumers, and that the consumer is really, at the end of the day, in the centre of all of this, and we're all working towards having those benefits realised for consumers. So I'd also encourage everyone to keep an eye on this space, because we expect that report to be released in the coming weeks.
Do you want to give us an idea of how Pay2 is going to work with action initiation, Emily? Because I'm dying to know. Okay, well,
I think you need to come to our action initiation roundtable later, where we will talk in a little bit more detail about action initiation, the legislative framework. I don't think we've worked out how action initiation will work with Pay2, and we're really looking to get feedback and ideas from stakeholders in industry.
I think Simon's jumping the gun a bit there. We do have time for questions at the end, and I'm sure a lot will be directed to Emily. Just on that note, and I'm interested to hear from all the panellists on this. So with knowing what the future is potentially going to look like with CDR, how can fintech and regulators continue to work together to ensure we have further success on this?
I'll jump in first. It's absolutely crucial for us that we as CDR agencies, so the Treasury, the ACCC, the Data Standards Body, that we all work really well together, but then that we also work really well with industry, that we get the feedback that we need from fintechs. It's such an interesting, from a policy perspective, it's such an interesting policy space, because we're providing policy advice, we're building this, we're operating it, we're maintaining it, we're regulating, we're doing all of that at the same time. And so feedback has to be constant. We really value when fintechs get in contact with us with great ideas, when they want to feed into processes. And we've had a really good relationship with a number of fintechs where we can have really informal conversations before we're getting to formal consultation processes. And I think that's really important, and we'd really like to continue those relationships.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this a love fest, but but I do agree with Emily, and in fact, because we now have multiple use cases live in market, multiple types of consent flow within each of those use cases as well. And the way we've been able to do that is working with Treasury and the ACCC. So, I'd encourage all fintechs to think about what your ultimate customer proposition needs to be, construct it how you want to see it, how it's going to work best for your customer experience, and then bring it to Treasury and the ACCC and say, this is how we want it to work. There's obviously going to be a regulatory framework that's going to sit around that, but we've found there is definitely flexibility in creating the kind of experience that you want to deliver to market.
Great. And look, from Envestnet Yodlee's perspective, I think it's been beneficial for us to work with the ACCC closely in providing that feedback and submissions, which has always been openly received, so we thank you for that. What we can move to, if everyone's open, is we've got a good 10 minutes, and I feel like we've got some good questions sitting out there in the audience. If we'd just like to open up for anyone who would like to ask some questions. Down the front here, please.
I think this is, as I said, I think this is probably the sixth CDR-based panel.
In some of the previous sessions, people have been saying they'd love to see more talk and more encouragement and participation of small businesses to exercise their data rights. Now, it is called the consumer data right, so I think sometimes we forget that small businesses are part of this ecosystem as well. I'd just be interested on some thoughts as to, what do you see as possibilities or interesting, or, maybe something you can say about how small businesses can get more involved.
We absolutely include small businesses as consumers in the consumer data right, and we really recognise that there has been some barriers for small businesses to participate. It's been a really strong theme and strong feedback that has come through the statutory review process. So I would say, when that report's released, have a look at the recommendations and findings there that relate to small businesses. But it is particularly something that the Treasury is focused on at the moment, and I think we'll have some rule changes that we'll be socialising soon that will hopefully help small businesses participate in the consumer data right.
Thank you.
I can just add a little bit to that, Jennifer. It's a good question. So we, in the B2B context of us working with other businesses, we've certainly been approached by other fintechs that work with SMEs. So there's definitely interest. I don't think they've landed on a compelling use case yet to be able to deliver. And there's also the fact that it has been kind of pushed as the consumer data right has maybe not given them a great confidence to come forward. So, but there's definitely interest out there anyway.
And a question down the back.
Yeah. Hi. I have a question on exactly opposite of what we are doing. So we are talking about consuming data and making more insightful decisions on behalf of customers. But where does it end? There are banks who would not give you a loan if you had afterpay payments in your last 3 months. Then there are insurance companies who will void your insurance if you drive too fast, or if you buy smokes, your health insurance is void. Where does it end? Where's Big Brother not watching you anymore?
That is the exact opposite. We're talking about consumers having choice and control about how they share their data. We're certainly not talking about big companies and corporations having the choice and control of that consumer data. So, if a consumer wants to share their data to get a better deal, that's what they can do, but they're not forced to do that under the consumer data right.
And probably just to add to that, I think it helps with situations like responsible lending, for example. So it's not to the detriment of the consumer, it's more about having the right data and being able to make a responsible lending decision of whether they can afford that mortgage and that loan.
Yeah, I think just one thing I'll add to that is that this is the biggest problem now with people going to apply for financial products, is that they don't know what information they need to provide in order to become approved for a loan. So if you submit a mortgage application and somebody at a big bank has got their red ruler out and found out that you went to Uber Eats and got some Mexican last night, is that going to affect your home loan? And I think that process will actually be untangled with open finance, because if you think about the problem that consumers are trying to solve, is they're trying to find the best possible product at the best possible interest rate that suits them. And with more data in an open format, that discovery for those products becomes a lot more easier. And so instead of you applying to one bank, becoming declined, applying for the second bank, going through that same painful process, is that you automatically be provided with that option that suits you, that you'll be able to be approved for, as opposed to waiting very painfully, am I going to get my loan approved or not? So I think open finance actually solves a lot of those problems that we've experienced so far with examples that you've just mentioned.
Question down the front.
Hi guys, this is probably a question for, I pointed at Emily, but everyone can answer. It's more about just open banking and the adoption curve. At the moment, it's still early days. All the banks are just working to comply. How is Treasury thinking about driving adoption once everyone's met those compliance hurdles? Everyone's now a data holder. Is there any intention to kind of I suppose, force more adoption into the CDR?
What we hear from data holders who have come through the process is that there is quite a burden in terms of compliance in becoming a data holder and meeting the obligations. And I think we've come through that stage, and it's now that we're seeing data holders turn their minds to becoming accredited data recipients, and that's where they'll get the value. And it's also really important to us that we continue to expand the CDR and the data sets that are included, because we believe that that will drive more products, more services, and when we have more products and services, that will drive, more participation. And then again, we also think that action initiation is going to be a game changer for the CDR. So bringing, we heard in the last panel talking about the power of bringing data together with that ability to act on the data will be really powerful. And again, it's products and services that are going to drive participation in the CDR.
Maybe I'll just talk to the first part of that, which is about the lack of adoption. So you mentioned power. So my mate Nick is an elite rower, and he rowed at the Olympics, and he was telling me once about how they go faster in the boat, and it's about the framework that they already have. It's about their technique and their stroke rate being the same, and then when they want to go faster, they just feed power into that framework. So I think, in our experience over the last couple of years, we've been building that framework, we've been getting everything in place. It's definitely all there now. 110 banks, the kind of speed and reliability of data is definitely there. We're seeing it being deployed in use cases. It's really just now about feeding power into the ecosystem and the framework itself. And that means that, fintechs need to be a little bit brave and start to deploy use cases. To your point, Emily, we work with banks as well, and we see that the conversations we're having now are very different to where they were a year ago. Banks are now coming through that compliance hurdle, the fog's clearing, and they're coming up, and now they're coming to talk to us about, okay, well, what can we do on that data recipient side? And they're actually doing that because of the level of investment they've had to put into becoming a data holder. They're like, well, actually, we need an ROI on this thing now. What can we do? How can we ingest that data and actually do something with it? So I think the next 12 months are going to be super exciting. In a way, our focus is to get what we've got in front of us now moving faster. And Emily, I guess your role is to continue to expand ahead of us and bring in these new data sets and expand the kind of use cases that can be delivered and the kind of value that we can deliver for consumers.
Great. And I think we're almost at about time, so I think I might just wrap up with one quick question for you all. If you'd just like to explain one point of what you're really excited about looking for in the future of CDR. Who would like to start?
Oh, good to go. I think to the point before about the story about Emma, I think that's probably the most exciting parts. And I think if we just draw the lens right back and look at it from an Australian context, there's a number that we should all be proud of, which is that 8% of Australia's GDP is in financial services. Now, if you think about that, is that all the cost that is gone into banking in order to deliver financial products to everyday consumers is basically been eaten up by the financial system. And I think what open finance can do is lower down that cost curve through competition to drive then that economic surplus to be transferred from the banking sector now back to consumers. So a story like Emma, if they're saving $3,500, that can be for everybody, and I think Australia will be in a much better place for that. So really excited about the future of open finance and what it can do to unlock a better financial life for all Aussies.
Great. I think what I'm really excited about and what I've heard a lot about over the last kind of day or so is what this will mean for consumers, that consumers actually will have a real alternative to data sharing that is safe and secure, where they have control, they know for what purpose they're sharing that data, and it can make a real difference for them in terms of convenience, choice, and making good financial decisions. I think consumers have have been pretty angry about how they've been forced to share their data to get access to products and services. So this will be a real alternative in the future, and I'm excited to see, when we actually get to that point where consumers, maybe they don't know they're using their consumer data right, that's okay with us, but it's there and it's working for them.
Yeah, and I'm excited about new use cases. So the two big ones in the market, I don't think are any secret, which are data aggregation into PFM or financial wellbeing, and then the lending use case. Those are the two dominant ones in the market at the moment that people want. But I think there's some incredibly exciting, lighter and simpler use cases. Those two big ones are actually pretty hard to deliver from a data management perspective. And things like just delivering a consumer a real-time, genuine insight from a very rich data set that can include energy and telco and finance. That's going to be really compelling, I think, and I'm really excited for the types of use cases that hopefully people in this room are going to help us deliver to consumers in the future.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, and please thank our esteemed panellists for the discussion today.